The morning sun cast long shadows across the training facility as Sarah Chun adjusted her rifle scope for the third time. At 22, she looked even younger in her oversized fatigues, her slight frame dwarfed by the heavy sniper rifle she carried. The other Navy SEALs around her were already making jokes, their voices carrying across the range despite their attempts at whispers. "Are we running a daycare now?" muttered Petty Officer Jake Morrison, a burly man with arms like tree trunks. He'd been with SEAL Team 6 for 8 years and had never seen anything like this. A female sniper trainee was unusual enough, but one who looked like she belonged in high school was downright bizarre. Chief Petty Officer Mike Rodriguez, the range instructor, checked his clipboard again. Sarah Chun, age 22, fresh out of sniper school with the highest marks in her class. But looking at her now, surrounded by battle-hardened SEALs who averaged 6'2" and 200 pounds of muscle, he wondered if the paperwork was wrong. Maybe someone had made a mistake. "Listen up," Rodriguez called out, his voice echoing across the range. "Today we're running precision drills at various distances. We've got targets set up from 400 to 1,200 meters. Each shooter gets 10 rounds. Best grouping wins bragging rights for the month." The SEALs lined up along the firing line, their confidence evident in every movement. These men had trained together for years, fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, and trusted each other with their lives. Sarah took position at the far end of the line, her rifle looking almost comically large in her hands. "Hey kid," called out Petty Officer First Class Tony Williams from 2 positions down. "You sure you can handle that thing? It's got more kick than a mule." Sarah glanced over briefly but didn't respond. She'd heard worse during her months at sniper school. Being the only woman in a class of 35 had taught her to let her shooting do the talking. She began setting up her rifle with methodical precision, checking every component twice. The first shooter stepped up. Morrison took his position with the confidence of someone who'd done this thousands of times. His rifle cracked 10 times in steady succession, each shot placed with practiced ease. When the spotting scope revealed his grouping, the other SEALs whistled appreciatively. 8 inches at 800 meters was solid shooting by any standard. "Not bad for an old man," Williams joked as he took his turn. His grouping was slightly tighter at 7 inches, earning him a round of congratulations from his teammates. One by one, the SEALs took their shots. Each man was skilled, their years of training evident in their steady breathing and smooth trigger pulls. The best grouping so far belonged to Petty Officer Second Class Danny Martinez, with a 5-inch spread at 600 meters. As Sarah's turn approached, the chatter among the SEALs grew louder. They weren't trying to be cruel, but the situation seemed almost absurd to them. This tiny woman, who looked like she weighed maybe 120 pounds soaking wet, was about to compete with some of the most elite marksmen in the military. $20 says she can't even hit the target, whispered Morrison to Williams. "I'll take that bet," Williams replied. "But I'm betting she flinches so hard on the first shot that she drops the rifle." Rodriguez observed the betting pool forming among his men with growing irritation. These were supposed to be professionals, elite warriors who understood that combat didn't care about your size or gender. But he'd seen this attitude before, and sometimes the best teacher was experience. Sarah approached the firing line with her rifle slung across her back. Her movements were economical, wasting no energy on unnecessary motion. She dropped into the prone position and began setting up her shot with the same methodical precision she'd shown earlier. The SEALs fell silent as she adjusted her bipod legs and settled behind her scope. There was something about her positioning that looked different, professional. Her body formed perfect angles, her breathing was controlled, and her grip on the rifle was textbook perfect. "Range is hot," Rodriguez called out. "Shooter, you may commence firing when ready." Sarah took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Through her scope, she could see the target clearly at 800 meters. The wind was light, maybe 3 miles per hour from the left. She made a tiny adjustment to her scope and settled into her natural point of aim. The rifle cracked once, sharp and clean. Even before the spotting scope could confirm the hit, Sarah was already cycling the bolt and preparing for her second shot. Her movements were fluid, practiced, without the hurried rush of someone trying to prove themselves. "Bullseye," Rodriguez called out, surprise evident in his voice. The SEALs exchanged glances. Lucky shot, they figured. Even a broken clock was right twice a day. Sarah fired again. And again. Each shot came at precise intervals, her breathing pattern never changing. She worked through her 10 rounds with mechanical precision, each bullet finding its mark with increasing accuracy. When the final shot echoed across the range, Rodriguez trained his spotting scope on the target and felt his eyebrows climb toward his hairline. He checked again, certain he was seeing things wrong. "Range is cold," he announced. "All shooters, make your weapons safe." The SEALs gathered around Rodriguez as he examined the target through high-powered binoculars. What he saw defied belief. 10 holes clustered so tightly together they almost formed a single ragged opening. The grouping measured less than 2 inches at 800 meters. "Holy shit," Morrison breathed, forgetting himself. "That's impossible." "Language, petty officer," Rodriguez said automatically, but his heart wasn't in the correction. He was staring at the target display in disbelief. In 15 years of instructing snipers, he'd never seen shooting like this, especially not from someone who looked like they should be asking for homework help instead of handling a rifle. Williams grabbed the binoculars and looked for himself. "There's got to be a mistake. Maybe she was hitting someone else's target." "Negative," Rodriguez replied, checking his notes. "Target 7 is confirmed as Chen's." And before anyone asks, "Yes, I watched every shot through the scope." Sarah had already begun cleaning her rifle with the same methodical care she'd shown throughout the exercise. She seemed completely unaware of the commotion her shooting had caused among the SEALs. Martinez approached her cautiously, as if she might spook like a wild animal. "Hey, that was some pretty good shooting there," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. Sarah looked up briefly from her cleaning kit. "Thank you," she said simply, then returned to her rifle. The brevity of her response caught Martinez off guard. Most shooters, especially new ones, would have been eager to talk about such an impressive display. But Sarah seemed almost indifferent to the attention. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Williams asked, joining the conversation. "Practice," Sarah replied without looking up. Morrison snorted. "Practice doesn't explain shooting like that. I've been practicing for 8 years, and I couldn't touch that grouping on my best day." Sarah finished cleaning her rifle and began packing her gear. "Everyone learns differently," she said quietly. Her calm demeanor was starting to unnerve the SEALs. They were used to bravado, to chest thumping, and competition. Sarah showed none of that. She delivered the most impressive shooting performance any of them had ever witnessed, then acted like it was nothing more than another day at the office. Rodriguez approached the group, his face thoughtful. "Chun, where were you stationed before this assignment?" "Sniper school at Fort Benning for 6 months. Then, advanced marksmanship training at Quantico for 3 months, she replied, shouldering her rifle case. "And before that, basic training at Great Lakes, then A School for Intelligence Specialist rating." The SEALs exchanged confused looks. Intelligence Specialist was about as far from sniper as you could get in the Navy. It was a desk job, analyzing reports and writing briefings. How did someone go from pushing papers to shooting like Annie Oakley? "What made you want to become a sniper?" Rodriguez pressed. For the first time, Sarah hesitated before answering. "I tested well during basic marksmanship training. My instructors suggested I try for sniper school." It was a non-answer, and everyone knew it. But there was something in her tone that suggested the conversation was over. Sarah finished packing her gear and headed toward the exit. "Chun," Rodriguez called after her. "Report to the briefing room at 1400 hours. We're going over next week's training schedule." Sarah nodded and continued walking, leaving behind a group of thoroughly confused Navy SEALs. As soon as she was out of earshot, the questions started flying. "What the hell was that?" Morrison demanded. "I've seen Chris Kyle's shooting videos," Williams added. "That was Chris Kyle level accuracy." "Better than Chris Kyle," Martinez corrected quietly. "Kyle's best documented grouping was 3 inches at 1,000 meters. She just shot 2 inches at 800. Rodriguez rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Something about Sarah Chun didn't add up. Her personnel file showed a standard Navy career track with nothing to suggest exceptional marksmanship ability. Yet he'd just witnessed shooting that belonged in record books. "Chief, you think she's some kind of ringer?" Morrison asked. "Maybe Special Operations Command is testing us or something?" "I don't know what she is," Rodriguez admitted. "But I intend to find out. The rest of the afternoon training proceeded normally, but the SEALs found their attention repeatedly drifting to thoughts of the mysterious female sniper. During breaks, they huddled together discussing what they'd witnessed. Maybe she's military intelligence, Williams suggested. You know, sent here to evaluate our training methods. Or maybe she's the real deal, Martinez countered. Just because she's small doesn't mean she can't shoot. Morrison shook his head. Come on, Danny. You saw how young she looks. There's no way someone that young, that small, developed skills like that through normal training. The debate continued through chow time and into the evening. By lights out, the entire team was consumed with curiosity about Sarah Chun and her impossible shooting ability. Meanwhile, Sarah sat alone in her assigned quarters, methodically field stripping and cleaning her rifle for the second time that day. The weapon was already spotless, but the familiar routine helped her think. She'd known this moment would come eventually. Ever since arriving at the training facility, she'd been trying to blend in, to avoid drawing attention. But her instructors had insisted on the precision shooting exercise, and she couldn't bring herself to shoot poorly on purpose. It went against everything her grandfather had taught her. The memory of her grandfather brought a slight smile to her face. Lu Chun had been a different kind of teacher, demanding perfection not through harsh words, but through quiet patience. He'd started her on-air rifles when she was 7, graduating to .22 caliber by age 10. By the time she turned 16, she could consistently hit playing cards at 300 yards. But her grandfather's lessons had extended far beyond marksmanship. He'd taught her patience, discipline, and the importance of humility. Let others underestimate you, he'd often said in Mandarin. It is a gift they give you freely. Now, surrounded by Navy SEALs who clearly questioned her presence, Sarah understood the wisdom in those words. Their skepticism could work to her advantage, as long as she didn't let pride get in the way. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She quickly reassembled her rifle and stowed it in its case before answering. Chief Rodriguez stood in the hallway, his expression unreadable. Chun, mind if I come in? We need to talk. Sarah stepped aside to let him enter. Her quarters were spartanly furnished, but meticulously organized. Everything had its place, from her precisely folded uniforms to her carefully arranged personal items. Rodriguez took note of the organization before settling into the room's single chair. Hell of a shooting display today, he began. Thank you, Chief. Want to tell me how someone with your background developed skills like that? Sarah considered her response carefully. I grew up around firearms, Chief. My grandfather taught me to shoot. Your grandfather must have been quite a teacher. He was. Rodriguez waited for elaboration, but none came. Sarah's answers were truthful, but revealed nothing of substance. He decided to try a different approach. The men are curious about you, he said. It's not often we see shooting like that, especially from someone so young. I understand their curiosity, Chief. But I'm here to train and serve, same as everyone else. Fair enough. But understand that these men have fought together, bled together. Trust doesn't come easy in this community. Sarah nodded. I don't expect special treatment, Chief. I'll earn my place here like anyone else. Rodriguez studied her face, looking for any sign of bravado or false confidence. He found none. Sarah Chun appeared to be exactly what she claimed, a sailor ready to do her job to the best of her ability. All right, he said, standing to leave. But know that tomorrow's training will be more challenging. We're moving to dynamic scenarios with moving targets and time pressure. I understand, Chief. After Rodriguez left, Sarah returned to her evening routine. She spent an hour reviewing technical manuals, another 30 minutes in physical conditioning. Then, lights out at exactly 2,200 hours. As she settled into her bunk, Sarah could hear muffled conversations from the other rooms. The SEALs were undoubtedly still discussing her performance, trying to reconcile what they'd witnessed with their preconceptions. Let them wonder, she thought, remembering her grandfather's words. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. And if her training had taught her anything, it was that consistent performance spoke louder than words ever could. The next morning would mark the beginning of advanced tactical training, where Sarah would face not just stationary targets, but complex scenarios designed to push even experienced snipers to their limits. The question wasn't whether she could handle the pressure, but whether the SEALs were ready for what they were about to witness. Dawn came early at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, and Sarah was already awake when the wake-up call echoed through the barracks at 0500 hours. She'd been lying in her bunk for 20 minutes, running through the day's training scenarios in her mind. Today would be different from yesterday's static shooting. Today would test everything she'd learned. The SEALs emerged from their quarters with the easy confidence of men who'd done this routine thousands of times. Morrison stretched his massive frame and yawned loudly, while Williams immediately began discussing the previous day's baseball scores with Martinez. Their casual demeanor masked years of intense training and combat experience. Sarah dressed quickly and efficiently, her movements precise and economical. She'd learned early in her military career that rushing led to mistakes, and mistakes in special operations could be fatal. Better to move with deliberate purpose than frantic speed. At morning chow, the conversation inevitably turned to training. The SEALs sat together at their usual table, their voices low but animated as they discussed the day ahead. Rodriguez said, "We're doing urban scenarios today." Martinez mentioned between bites of scrambled eggs. Multiple targets, time constraints, civilian considerations. "About time," Morrison replied. "I was getting tired of shooting paper targets. Give me something that moves and thinks." Williams glanced over at Sarah, who sat alone 2 tables away, methodically working through her breakfast. "Wonder how the kid will handle targets that shoot back." "Paper targets don't shoot back either," Martinez pointed out. "You know what I mean. Yesterday was impressive, but any shooter can hit a stationary target given enough time. Real sniping is about speed, accuracy, and decision-making under pressure." Chief Rodriguez entered the chow hall and surveyed his team. His expression was serious, the look of an instructor who knew his students were about to face their biggest challenge yet. "Listen up," he called out, his voice cutting through the morning conversations. "We're moving to the urban warfare complex in 30 minutes. Today's training will simulate real-world conditions with multiple scenarios. Each shooter will face different situations designed to test not just marksmanship, but tactical thinking and adaptability." He paused, making eye contact with each team member. "Some of you will be operating alone, others in pairs. Scenarios will include hostage situations, multiple target engagements, and long-range precision shots with civilian considerations." "Questions?" Morrison raised his hand. "What's the scoring system, Chief?" "Points for successful target elimination, minus points for civilian casualties or missed shots. Time bonuses for completing objectives quickly, but speed means nothing if you can't hit what you're aiming at." Sarah finished her breakfast and began cleaning her tray. The urban warfare complex was something she'd heard about, but never experienced. It was designed to replicate real-world combat situations, complete with mock buildings, moving targets, and scenarios that changed without warning. 30 minutes later, the team assembled outside a sprawling complex of concrete buildings designed to simulate a Middle Eastern city. The structures varied in height from single-story shops to 4-story apartment buildings, connected by narrow alleys and open courtyards. Somewhere within this maze, targets waited. Rodriguez stood before a large tactical board displaying the complex layout. Red X's marked sniper positions, while blue dots indicated potential target locations. "First scenario," he announced, "single sniper, multiple targets. Chun, you're up first." The choice of Sarah for the opening scenario wasn't random. Rodriguez wanted to see how she performed under pressure, with all eyes watching her every move. If yesterday's shooting had been a fluke, today would expose it. Sarah approached the equipment table and selected her gear methodically. Besides her rifle, she chose a rangefinder, wind meter, and tactical radio. Each piece of equipment was checked twice before being secured to her gear harness. "Your objective," Rodriguez continued, "is to eliminate 3 high-value targets located in different buildings. You'll have 30 minutes to identify, engage, and neutralize all targets. Civilian mannequins are scattered throughout the complex. Any civilian casualty results in mission failure." He handed her a tactical map showing the general layout, but no specific target locations. "Targets will be marked with red clothing. They may be stationary or mobile. Some may have hostages. Your job is to assess each situation and make the appropriate decision. Sarah studied the map briefly, then slung her rifle and headed toward the complex entrance. Behind her, the SEALs gathered around Rodriguez to watch her progress on closed-circuit monitors. The first building was a 3-story structure designed to look like an apartment complex. Sarah approached from the south, using the morning shadows for concealment. She moved with surprising stealth for someone carrying a heavy sniper rifle, each step carefully placed to minimize noise. Through the building's windows, she could see movement on the second floor. Sarah found a position 30 meters away behind a low wall and set up her rifle. Through her scope, she identified her first target, a red-shirt mannequin standing near a window, apparently scanning the street below. But something made her pause. She studied the scene more carefully and noticed a smaller figure partially concealed behind the target. A child mannequin, positioned to simulate a hostage situation. "Smart girl," Rodriguez muttered as he watched her hesitation on the monitor. "She's thinking it through." Sarah adjusted her position slightly, looking for an angle that would eliminate the target without endangering the hostage. The shot was possible but difficult, requiring precision that left no margin for error. She controlled her breathing and settled into her natural point of aim. The rifle cracked once. Through her scope, Sarah watched the target fall while the hostage remained unharmed. First objective complete. She quickly packed her gear and moved to the next building, a single-story structure designed to simulate a shop or small office. This target proved more challenging. The red-shirt figure was mobile, moving between windows in an unpredictable pattern. Sarah found a concealed position 40 meters away and studied the target's movement pattern. After 3 cycles, she identified a rhythm. The target paused at each window for approximately 8 seconds before moving to the next position. When the figure appeared at the eastern window, Sarah was ready. Her shot caught the target's center mass, dropping it instantly. 2 down, 1 to go. The third building was the most challenging, a 4-story structure with multiple windows and several civilian mannequins visible throughout. Sarah spent precious minutes identifying her target, finally spotting the red shirt on the building's roof. The angle was extreme, nearly straight up at a range of 60 meters. Wind at ground level was minimal, but conditions 4 stories up could be different. Sarah made her calculations and prepared for the most difficult shot of the scenario. She controlled her breathing and squeezed the trigger slowly. The bullet struck the target perfectly, sending it tumbling from the roof. Mission complete with 12 minutes to spare. As Sarah emerged from the complex, the SEALs were waiting with expressions ranging from surprise to outright amazement. She'd not only completed the scenario successfully, but had done so faster than any of them ever had. "Outstanding work, Chun," Rodriguez said, checking his stopwatch. 18 minutes, 3 targets eliminated, 0 civilian casualties. That's the best time anyone's posted on that scenario. Morrison shook his head in disbelief. "How'd you pick up on the hostage situation so fast? Most people miss that on their first run." "I took time to assess the situation before shooting," Sarah replied simply. "But you still made the shot," Williams pointed out. "That was maybe a 4-inch target window with the hostage positioned like that." Sarah began cleaning her rifle. The shot was within acceptable parameters. Her matter-of-fact response only added to the SEALs' growing respect. There was no boasting, no celebration of her achievement. To Sarah, it was simply another training exercise completed successfully. "All right, Martinez, you're up next," Rodriguez announced, trying to maintain the training schedule despite the distraction of Sarah's performance. Martinez approached the equipment table with noticeably less confidence than he'd shown the day before. Following an act like Sarah's was intimidating, even for an experienced SEAL. His scenario was different, but equally challenging. 2 snipers working together to eliminate multiple targets simultaneously. Williams partnered with him, and together they managed a respectable performance, completing their objectives in 25 minutes with 1 minor civilian casualty. Morrison's solo run came next. He chose a scenario involving a moving vehicle with multiple targets inside. His approach was more aggressive than Sarah's, relying on speed and firepower rather than careful assessment. He completed the mission successfully, but required nearly the full 30 minutes. As the day progressed, each SEAL faced different challenges designed to test various aspects of snipercraft. Some scenarios emphasized long-range accuracy, others focused on rapid target acquisition, and still others tested decision-making under pressure. Throughout it all, Sarah watched and learned. She studied each man's technique, noting their strengths and weaknesses. Morrison favored power and aggression, but sometimes rushed his shots. Williams was methodical like her, but lacked her precision at extreme ranges. Martinez had excellent tactical awareness, but occasionally hesitated when facing difficult shots. By midday, it was clear to everyone that Sarah Chun was something special. Her performance hadn't been a fluke or beginner's luck. She possessed a combination of technical skill, tactical awareness, and mental composure that was remarkable in someone so young. During the lunch break, the SEALs found themselves drawn to discuss her performance. "I don't get it," Morrison said, shaking his head. "Where'd she come from? People don't just develop skills like that overnight." "Maybe she's been training longer than we thought," Martinez suggested. "Her file might not tell the whole story." Rodriguez, who'd been listening to the conversation, decided to add some context. "I made some calls this morning," he said quietly. "Spoke to her instructors at sniper school. They said she showed up with minimal formal training, but exceptional natural ability. By graduation, she was outperforming instructors with 20 years of experience." "Natural ability doesn't explain shooting like that," Williams insisted. "I've got natural ability too, but I've never seen anyone pick up complex scenarios as fast as she did this morning." "What about her background check?" Morrison asked. "Any prior military experience in her family?" Rodriguez nodded slowly. "That's where it gets interesting. Her grandfather, Liu Chun, was a decorated marksman in the Chinese military before immigrating to the United States in the 1960s. Apparently, he trained her from childhood." The revelation added another piece to the puzzle, but didn't completely explain Sarah's abilities. Plenty of people grew up around firearms without developing elite-level skills. "Chinese military," Williams mused. "That explains the discipline and training methodology. But it doesn't explain how she adapted so quickly to American tactics and equipment." "Maybe that's just who she is," Martinez suggested. "Some people are natural warriors, regardless of their background or training." The afternoon brought more advanced scenarios, including one that would test all the snipers together in a coordinated operation. Rodriguez called it the Gauntlet, a complex urban warfare simulation that required multiple snipers to work together while facing constantly changing conditions. "This is where we separate the good shooters from the great ones," Rodriguez announced as the team assembled for briefing. "The Gauntlet is designed to simulate real combat conditions with multiple variables, time pressure, and consequences for poor decision-making." He pointed to a detailed map of the urban complex. "Your mission is to provide overwatch for a simulated rescue operation. Friendly forces will be moving through the complex to extract a high-value target. Your job is to eliminate threats while ensuring the safety of both the rescue team and any civilians in the area." The complexity of the scenario was immediately apparent. Multiple moving elements, changing conditions, and the need for precise coordination between snipers positioned in different locations. "Chun and Morrison, you'll take the north positions. Williams and Martinez, you've got the south. Communication is critical. Miss your shots or hit the wrong targets, and people die." As the team moved into position, Sarah found herself paired with Morrison, the most skeptical of the SEALs regarding her abilities. He'd been professional but distant throughout training, clearly struggling to reconcile her appearance with her performance. Their assigned position was atop a four-story building overlooking the main street where the rescue operation would unfold. Morrison set up his rifle on the eastern side, while Sarah took the western approach. "You handled that solo run pretty well this morning," Morrison said as they prepared their gear. It was the first time he'd addressed her directly since the training began. "Thank you," Sarah replied, adjusting her scope settings. "Want some advice for this scenario?" Sarah looked up from her rifle. "I'd appreciate any insights you can share." Morrison seemed surprised by her response. Most people get defensive when offered advice. They think it means you don't trust their abilities. "I know I don't have combat experience like you do," Sarah said honestly. "Any knowledge you're willing to share could save lives." The humility in her response caught Morrison off guard. He'd expected arrogance, or at least confidence bordering on cockiness. Instead, Sarah showed the wisdom to recognize her limitations while maintaining faith in her strengths. "All right," he said, warming to the topic. The key to Overwatch operations is anticipation. Don't wait for threats to appear in your scope. Study the environment, identify likely positions where enemies might emerge, and be ready. Sarah nodded, filing away the information. What about coordination between sniper teams? Communication is everything. Call out what you see, even if you're not sure it's a threat. Better to report a false positive than miss something that gets friendlies killed. As they spoke, Sarah began to understand why Morrison and the other SEALs were so tight-knit. Combat had taught them that survival depended on trust and communication. They weren't just teammates. They were brothers who'd learned to depend on each other completely. The rescue operation began precisely at 1,400 hours. Sarah watched through her scope as the simulated rescue team moved through the complex below, heading toward their objective in a 3-story building across the street. Everything started smoothly. The team moved with professional precision, clearing each intersection before advancing. Sarah scanned her assigned sector methodically, looking for any signs of hostile activity. The first threat appeared in a 2nd-story window of a building to her left. A red-shirt figure with a rifle, taking aim at the rescue team below. Sarah acquired the target and fired without hesitation. The threat eliminated, the rescue team continued their advance. Nice shot, Morrison's voice came through her earpiece. I've got movement in the building to your right, 2nd floor. Sarah shifted her scope and immediately identified the threat. Another hostile figure preparing to engage the rescue team. She eliminated it with a single shot, then returned to scanning her sector. The scenario continued to escalate. More threats appeared from different directions, some stationary, others mobile. The key was identifying legitimate targets while avoiding civilian mannequins scattered throughout the area. As the rescue team reached their objective, the situation became more complex. Multiple hostiles appeared simultaneously, forcing the snipers to prioritize their targets based on immediate threat levels. Sarah found herself engaging targets in rapid succession, each shot requiring split-second decisions about angle, wind, and civilian safety. Her training with her grandfather had prepared her for this kind of pressure, but the complexity of coordinating with other snipers added new challenges. Hostile emerging from the alley behind the rescue team, William's voice crackled through the radio. I don't have a clear shot. Sarah shifted her position and quickly identified the threat. The angle was difficult, requiring her to shoot through a narrow gap between buildings, but it was within her capabilities. I've got it, she responded, settling into her aim. The shot was one of the most challenging she'd attempted, threading the bullet through a space barely 6 inches wide. But her calculations were perfect, and the threat was eliminated before it could engage the rescue team. The scenario concluded successfully, with all objectives met and 0 casualties among friendly forces or civilians. As the team regrouped for debriefing, the respect in the SEALs' eyes was unmistakable. Rodriguez reviewed their performance with obvious satisfaction. Outstanding work, all of you. Chun, that shot through the alley gap was textbook precision shooting. Morrison approached Sarah as they packed their gear. That advice I gave you about anticipation? Forget it. You were already 3 steps ahead of every threat that appeared. For the first time since arriving at the facility, Sarah smiled. Your advice about communication was valuable. I wouldn't have known about the alley threat without William's call. The acknowledgement of teamwork seemed to seal something between them. Morrison extended his hand, and Sarah shook it firmly. Welcome to the team, Chun, he said. Looks like we might actually learn something from you. As they headed back to base for evening chow, Sarah reflected on the day's progress. The SEALs' initial skepticism was giving way to respect, but she knew that earning their complete trust would take time. Combat veterans didn't accept new teammates easily, especially ones who challenged their preconceptions. But for the first time since arriving at the facility, Sarah felt like she might actually belong here. The missions ahead would be more challenging, the stakes higher, but today had proven that she could hold her own among the military's elite. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new opportunities to prove herself. And if the morning's performance was any indication, the SEALs were about to discover that their quiet female sniper had skills that would surprise even them. The call came at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning, shattering the pre-dawn quiet of the Naval Special Warfare Facility. Emergency lights bathed the barracks in red as the alert klaxon wailed, bringing every SEAL instantly awake. This wasn't a drill. The tone, timing, and intensity of the alert meant only one thing: real-world deployment. Sarah rolled out of her bunk with practiced efficiency, her muscle memory taking over as she grabbed her go bag and gear. Around her, the other SEALs moved with the same urgent precision, their movements economical despite the early hour. Years of training had conditioned them to wake up ready for action. Chief Rodriguez's voice echoed through the barracks communication system. All personnel to the briefing room in 15 minutes. Full kit. This is not a drill. The briefing room buzzed with controlled energy as the team assembled. Maps, satellite photos, and intelligence reports covered every available surface. Rodriguez stood at the front beside a stern-faced officer Sarah didn't recognize, a full commander whose presence indicated the seriousness of their situation. "Listen up," Rodriguez began, his voice cutting through the low conversations. 6 hours ago, a Navy destroyer conducting routine patrols in the Persian Gulf intercepted a distress signal from an American cargo vessel. The ship was reportedly under attack by armed pirates operating from fast boats. He gestured to a satellite image showing a large container ship surrounded by smaller vessels. The merchant vessel is currently dead in the water approximately 40 nautical miles from the nearest friendly port. Initial reports indicate at least 15 crew members held hostage. Commander Harrison stepped forward, his expression grim. Intelligence suggests this isn't a random piracy incident. The attackers appear to be a well-organized group with military-grade weapons and tactical training. They've demanded ransom, but haven't made any contact for the past 3 hours. Sarah studied the satellite imagery while listening to the briefing. The cargo ship's size and position made any rescue attempt extremely challenging. Multiple decks, numerous hiding places for hostages, and the constant movement of the ocean would complicate any sniper operations. "Your mission," Commander Harrison continued, "is to provide precision fire support for a direct action team that will board the vessel and secure the hostages. Snipers will be positioned on the destroyer to eliminate threats during the initial assault." Morrison raised his hand. "What's the estimated number of hostile forces, sir?" "Intelligence suggests 8 to 12 armed individuals. They're using the cargo ship's superstructure for cover and have positioned crew members as human shields in key locations." The tactical challenge was immediately apparent to everyone in the room. Engaging targets on a moving ship from another moving ship while avoiding civilian casualties represented one of the most difficult sniper scenarios possible. Rodriguez took over the briefing. "Chun, Morrison, Williams, and Martinez will deploy as the sniper team. Helicopter transport leaves in 45 minutes. Questions?" Williams spoke up. "What's the timeline once we reach the destroyer?" "Daylight assault commencing at 0800 hours, Harrison replied. "That gives you approximately 90 minutes to establish positions and coordinate with the boarding party." As the team dispersed to gather their equipment, Morrison approached Sarah with a serious expression. "You sure you're ready for this? It's not training anymore." Sarah secured her rifle case and checked her gear one final time. "I understand the stakes," she replied calmly. "Do you?" Morrison pressed. "Because if you hesitate out there, if you miss your shot when it counts, American sailors die. There's no second chances in real combat." The weight of his words wasn't lost on Sarah. She'd trained extensively, proven herself in simulation after simulation, but this would be her first real combat operation. The targets would be human beings, and the consequences of failure extended far beyond training scores. "I won't let the team down," she said, meeting Morrison's gaze directly. Something in her tone convinced him. Morrison nodded once and headed toward the helicopter pad. "Then, let's go save some sailors." The flight to the destroyer took 2 hours over choppy seas. Sarah used the time to study intelligence reports and tactical maps, memorizing every detail of the cargo ship's layout. The vessel was a massive container ship, over 900 feet long with multiple decks and superstructure levels that could conceal hostiles. As they approached the destroyer USS Fitzgerald, Sarah could see the cargo ship in the distance, surrounded by several small boats. Smoke rose from one section of the merchant vessel, indicating possible sabotage or battle damage. The destroyer's captain, a weathered veteran named Captain Sullivan, met them on the flight deck. "Glad you're here," he said without preamble. "Situation's deteriorating rapidly. The pirates have moved most hostages to the bridge area and are threatening to start executing them if we don't back off. He led them to the ship's tactical center, where real-time surveillance footage showed the cargo ship's condition. Several bodies were visible on the deck, and armed figures moved between cargo containers with tactical precision. These aren't your typical pirates, Captain Sullivan continued. They're organized, well-equipped, and appear to have military training. Our intelligence suggests they're part of a larger criminal organization with connections to regional terrorist groups. Sarah studied the surveillance footage carefully. The hostiles moved with discipline and purpose, suggesting combat experience. Their positions were well chosen, offering good fields of fire while using cargo containers for cover. What's the destroyer's position relative to the target? Martinez asked. We'll close to within 800 meters for the assault, Sullivan replied. Close enough for effective sniper support, but far enough to avoid small arms fire from the cargo ship. 800 meters from a moving platform to a moving target with hostages in close proximity. Sarah ran the calculations in her head, factoring in wind, ship movement, and the need for instantaneous target elimination. It would be among the most challenging shooting she'd ever attempted. The sniper team was assigned positions along the destroyer's superstructure, each covering different sections of the cargo ship. Sarah's sector included the bridge area where most hostages were reportedly held. As they set up their equipment, Williams approached her position. You've been quiet since we boarded, he observed. Thinking through the shots, Sarah replied, adjusting her rifle's bipod to compensate for the ship's movement. Good. But, remember, you can't think too long out there. These situations develop fast, and hesitation gets people killed. Sarah nodded, appreciating the advice. The SEALs had accepted her as part of the team, but they were still looking out for her during her first real combat operation. At 0745 hours, Captain Sullivan announced the beginning of the assault phase. The destroyer moved into position as helicopter-borne assault teams prepared for insertion onto the cargo ship. Through her scope, Sarah could see movement on the cargo ship's bridge. Armed figures moved between windows, occasionally visible for only seconds at a time. Somewhere among them were American hostages whose lives depended on the precision and timing of the rescue operation. Overwatch teams, report status. Rodriguez's voice crackled through her earpiece. Morrison in position, Sector 1 clear for now. Williams set, covering Sector 2. Martinez ready, watching Sector 3. Chun in position, Sector 4 ready. Sarah's voice was steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. The first helicopters approached the cargo ship from multiple angles, their rotor wash creating additional movement on the water. Sarah tracked several targets through her scope, but held fire, waiting for the assault to begin. Execute, 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 came the command. The assault teams fast-roped onto the cargo ship's deck as the sniper teams engaged targets of opportunity. Sarah's first shot came within seconds as an armed hostile appeared at a bridge window, rifle raised toward the approaching helicopters. Her bullet took the target's center mass, dropping him instantly. She immediately shifted to acquire new targets as the battle intensified below. Two hostiles on the port side superstructure, Morrison called out. Engaging now. The sound of rifle fire echoed across the water as all four snipers engaged targets simultaneously. Sarah found herself in a deadly rhythm. Acquire target, assess civilian risk, engage, move to next threat. Her grandfather's training took over, muscle memory guiding her movements while her conscious mind focused on target identification. A new threat appeared in her scope, an armed figure holding a hostage at gunpoint on the bridge wing. The shot was impossible for anyone else, but Sarah had a narrow angle through a gap in the ship's railing. I have eyes on a hostage situation, bridge wing, she reported. Hostile using crew member as shield. Can you take the shot? Rodriguez asked. Sarah studied the target through her scope. The hostile's head was partially visible behind the hostage, but the angle was extreme and the ship's movement made precise aiming difficult. A miss would certainly result in the hostage's death. Affirmative. Clear shot available. Take it. Sarah controlled her breathing and timed her shot with the ship's movement patterns. She'd been studying the rhythm since taking position, learning how the destroyer's motion affected her point of aim. At the perfect moment between swells, she squeezed the trigger. The hostile dropped immediately, releasing the unharmed hostage who collapsed to the deck, but remained alive. Sarah immediately shifted to scan for new threats. "Outstanding shot, Chun," came Williams' voice through the radio. The battle continued for another 15 minutes as assault teams cleared the ship deck by deck. Sarah eliminated 3 more targets during the operation, each shot requiring split-second decisions about angle, risk, and timing. When they all clear finally came, 12 hostiles had been eliminated and all 15 hostages recovered alive. The precision of the sniper team's fire had been critical in preventing civilian casualties during the chaotic assault. As the team packed their equipment, Morrison approached Sarah with an expression she'd never seen before, genuine respect mixed with something approaching awe. "That hostage shot," he said quietly. "I've been doing this for 8 years, and I wouldn't have attempted it. The angle, the movement, the margin for error, it was basically impossible." Sarah secured her rifle case. It was within acceptable parameters. Morrison laughed, shaking his head. "Acceptable parameters? You just made one of the most difficult shots I've ever witnessed, and you call it acceptable parameters." Captain Sullivan joined them as they prepared to return to base. "Outstanding work out there, all of you. The hostage rescue was successful thanks to your precise fire support." He turned specifically to Sarah. "That shot you made on the bridge wing, 20-year veterans would have passed on that one. Command is going to want a full debrief on your performance." During the helicopter flight back to base, Sarah reflected on her first combat operation. The training scenarios had prepared her technically, but nothing could have simulated the psychological pressure of knowing that real lives hung in the balance with every shot. The other SEALs were quiet during the flight, each processing the morning's events in their own way. Combat had a way of stripping away pretense and revealing character, and Sarah had proven herself under the ultimate test. Back at the facility, the debrief session lasted 3 hours. Every shot was analyzed, every decision examined, and every outcome evaluated. Sarah's performance was particularly scrutinized, given her lack of prior combat experience. "Sniper Chun," Commander Harrison said during the session, "your shooting today was exceptional, but I'm more impressed by your decision-making under pressure. You showed remarkable judgment in target selection and civilian safety considerations." The formal recognition felt good, but Sarah valued the respect of her teammates more than official commendations. As they left the briefing room, she found herself walking alongside Martinez. "So how does it feel?" he asked. "Your first real combat operation." Sarah considered the question carefully. "Different from training. More intense, but also more focused. When people's lives are at stake, everything else becomes very clear." "That's the mark of a natural warrior," Martinez observed. "Some people freeze up when it gets real. Others, like you, seem to find another level of performance." That evening at Chow, the atmosphere among the SEALs was noticeably different. Sarah was no longer the outsider being evaluated. She was a proven team member who'd earned her place through performance under fire. Williams sat down across from her with his dinner tray. "Got a message from the destroyer's captain," he said. "Turns out one of the hostages you saved was the ship's engineer. Guy's got 3 kids back home." The information hit Sarah harder than she'd expected. During the operation, targets had been abstract threats to be eliminated. Now they had faces, families, stories that extended far beyond the tactical situation. "Makes it real, doesn't it?" Morrison said, joining the conversation. "When you realize that every shot we take protects someone's father, husband, brother." Sarah nodded, understanding now why the SEALs took their responsibilities so seriously. They weren't just elite shooters or tactical specialists. They were guardians whose actions directly impacted innocent lives. "The hardest part," Martinez added, "is carrying that responsibility without letting it paralyze you. You have to care enough to do the job right, but not so much that you can't pull the trigger when necessary." Over the following days, word of the successful hostage rescue spread throughout the naval special warfare community. Sarah found herself receiving recognition from senior officers she'd never met, but the acknowledgement that mattered most came from her teammates. "You know what impressed me most about your performance?" Morrison said during a quiet moment between training exercises. "It wasn't the impossible shots or the perfect decision-making. It was how you handled the pressure without changing who you are." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "Some people get their first taste of combat. and it goes to their heads. They start thinking they're invincible or that they've got nothing left to learn. You came back from that operation the same person who left, just with more experience. The observation resonated with Sarah because it reflected her grandfather's teachings about humility and continuous improvement. Success in one engagement didn't guarantee success in the next. It simply provided lessons for future challenges. As the week progressed, training resumed its normal intensity, but with a new dynamic. Sarah was no longer the unknown quantity being tested. She was a proven operator whose opinions and insights were valued by the team. During a complex urban warfare exercise, she found herself naturally falling into a leadership role, coordinating with other snipers and making tactical decisions that affected the entire operation. The transition felt natural, as if she'd been part of the team for years rather than weeks. Funny how fast things can change, Williams observed after a particularly successful training exercise. 3 weeks ago, we were wondering if you could handle basic marksmanship. Now you're running coordinated sniper operations like you've been doing it your whole life. Sarah cleaned her rifle as they talked, the familiar routine helping her process the rapid changes in her status within the team. I had good teachers, she said simply. You had the same instructors as everyone else who comes through here, Morrison pointed out. The difference is what you brought to the training. That evening, Chief Rodriguez called Sarah to his office for a private conversation. His expression was serious, but not unfriendly as she took a seat across from his desk. Command has been reviewing your performance since joining the team, he began, both in training and in combat operations. Sarah waited, unsure whether this was leading to commendation or criticism. They're impressed, Rodriguez continued. So impressed that they're considering you for advancement to more specialized operations. Missions that would put you on the front lines of America's most sensitive military operations. The implications were staggering. Sarah had joined the Navy planning to serve her country, but never imagining she'd rise to such elite levels so quickly. What would that involve, she asked. Operations I can't discuss in detail, but that require the highest levels of skill, judgment, and discretion. The kind of missions where failure isn't just a setback. It's a national security catastrophe. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, studying her reaction. The question is whether you're ready for that level of responsibility. Combat is one thing. Operations where you might be the only thing standing between American civilians and terrorist attacks are something else entirely. Sarah thought about the hostage rescue, about the American sailors whose lives had depended on her precision and judgment. She thought about her grandfather's teachings, about the responsibility that came with exceptional ability. When would these operations begin? She asked. Rodriguez smiled, recognizing her answer in the question itself. Soon. Very soon. And when they do, you'll discover that everything you've experienced so far has been preparation for challenges you can't even imagine yet. As Sarah left Rodriguez's office, she realized that her journey was just beginning. The skeptical SEALs who'd questioned her presence had become teammates who trusted her with their lives. The training facility that had seemed so intimidating now felt like home. But ahead lay missions that would test not just her marksmanship skills, but her ability to operate independently in situations where backup might be impossible and failure could have consequences extending far beyond military objectives. The quiet female sniper who'd surprised everyone with her shooting ability was about to discover that her real test lay not in proving herself to her teammates, but in living up to the expectations of a nation that was beginning to depend on her unique combination of skills, judgment, and unshakable calm under pressure. The briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command was unlike any Sarah had seen before. Located 3 stories underground, it was accessible only through multiple security checkpoints and biometric scanners. The walls displayed no unit insignia or motivational posters, just blank surfaces that suggested conversations here never officially happened. Sarah arrived precisely at 0600 hours, as instructed by the encrypted message she'd received the previous evening. She wore dress blues rather than combat gear, though she wasn't sure why. The formality felt strange after weeks of tactical training and field operations. Commander Harrison was waiting, along with 2 other officers she didn't recognize. A woman in civilian clothing sat at the far end of the table, her presence adding an air of mystery to the already unusual situation. Petty Officer Chun, Commander Harrison began. What I'm about to share with you is classified at the highest levels. The operation we're discussing doesn't officially exist, and neither will your participation if you accept this assignment. Sarah nodded, maintaining her composed exterior despite growing curiosity about the nature of this mysterious mission. The civilian woman leaned forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. I'm Sarah Mitchell from the State Department, though for our purposes today, I'm just someone who needs a particular problem solved quietly and efficiently. She activated a digital display showing satellite imagery of a sprawling compound in what appeared to be a Middle Eastern desert. 3 days ago, American intelligence assets identified a high-value target at this location in northern Syria. The individual is responsible for coordinating terrorist attacks that have killed over 200 American civilians in the past 18 months. The images showed a heavily fortified compound with multiple buildings, guard towers, and obvious security measures. It looked like a small fortress designed to withstand significant military assault. Traditional military options are not viable, Mitchell continued. The compound is located in a politically sensitive area where conventional operations could trigger international incidents. We need surgical precision with zero collateral damage and complete deniability. Commander Harrison took over the briefing. Intelligence indicates the target follows a specific routine. Every morning at dawn, he conducts personal prayers on the roof of the main building. For approximately 10 minutes, he's exposed and vulnerable. Sarah studied the imagery carefully, noting the distances and angles involved. What's the range from the nearest concealed position? 1,400 meters, Harrison replied. Across varied terrain with multiple environmental factors to consider. 1,400 meters, nearly a mile. It was an extreme distance even under ideal conditions, and these circumstances appeared far from ideal. Mitchell pulled up additional imagery showing the surrounding terrain. The shot would have to be taken from this ridgeline to the east. Rocky, uneven ground with unpredictable wind patterns. The target window is narrow, 10 minutes maximum before security sweeps the area. How would I reach the position? Sarah asked. Helicopter insertion 8 kilometers from the target area, then approach on foot during darkness. You'd have approximately 6 hours to reach the firing position, take the shot, and extract to the pickup zone. The complexity of the mission was staggering. A solo operation in hostile territory, requiring precise navigation, expert fieldcraft, and shooting at the absolute limits of human capability. What's the intelligence confidence level on the target's routine? Sarah inquired. High, Mitchell replied. We've observed the pattern for 2 weeks through satellite surveillance. The target is exceptionally disciplined about his prayer schedule. Harrison added more tactical details. Weather conditions are favorable for the next 3 days. After that, seasonal wind patterns change dramatically, making the shot much more difficult. Sarah processed the information methodically. The mission was dangerous beyond anything she'd previously attempted, but technically feasible if everything went perfectly. The key word being if. What kind of support would be available if something goes wrong? Mitchell's expression darkened. None. If you're captured or killed, the United States government will disavow any knowledge of your presence in Syria. You'll be operating completely alone with no backup and no extraction guarantee. The gravity of the situation settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just another special operations mission. It was a black operation with no safety net and consequences that extended far beyond personal risk. Why me specifically, she asked. Harrison and Mitchell exchanged glances before Harrison answered. Because you're the only sniper in American inventory capable of making this shot under these conditions. Your performance record, combined with your psychological profile, makes you uniquely qualified for solo operations requiring extreme precision. Also, Mitchell added, your recent arrival in the special operations community means fewer people know about your capabilities. Operational security is paramount. Sarah understood the implication. She was expendable in ways that more established operators were not. If something went wrong, her disappearance would create minimal disruption to ongoing operations. I need time to consider this, she said. You have 1 hour, Mitchell replied. After that, we'll need to pursue alternative options. Sarah was escorted to a small waiting room where she could think through the decision privately. The choice before her was stark. Accept a mission that could end her life and career, or decline, and potentially allow a terrorist responsible for hundreds of deaths to continue operating. She thought about the hostage rescue operation, about the American sailors whose lives she'd helped save. She thought about her grandfather's teachings regarding duty and service. Most of all, she thought about the weight of responsibility that came with exceptional abilities. 50 minutes later, Sarah returned to the briefing room. "I'll take the mission," she announced. Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Transportation leaves in 4 hours. Use that time to prepare your equipment and complete any personal affairs you need to handle." The preparation phase moved with stunning efficiency. Sarah selected her gear carefully, choosing equipment optimized for long-range precision rather than close combat. Her rifle case contained her specialized sniper system, modified for extreme distance shooting. Chief Rodriguez appeared as she finished packing. "Heard you volunteered for something special," he said quietly. "I can't discuss details," Sarah replied. "Don't need details. Just want you to know the team respects what you're doing. Takes guts to accept missions like this." His words meant more than any official commendation. Earning the respect of men like Rodriguez was worth more than ribbons or promotions. The helicopter flight to the insertion point took 6 hours over Mediterranean waters, followed by mountainous terrain that grew increasingly desolate as they approached Syrian airspace. Sarah used the flight time to study terrain maps and meteorological data, memorizing every detail that might affect her mission. The insertion itself was flawlessly executed. Under cover of darkness, the helicopter descended to within 10 feet of the rocky ground, allowing Sarah to fast rope down with her equipment. Within 30 seconds, the aircraft had vanished into the night, leaving her completely alone in hostile territory. Sarah oriented herself using night vision equipment and began the approach to her firing position. The terrain was even more challenging than satellite imagery had suggested. Loose rock, steep inclines, and unpredictable footing made progress slow and exhausting. 6 hours later, as dawn approached, Sarah reached the designated firing position. The ridgeline offered an excellent view of the target compound while providing natural concealment among the rocky outcroppings. She set up her rifle with methodical precision, using every technique her grandfather had taught her about long-range shooting. At 1,400 meters, even tiny errors in setup would result in complete misses. The wind was her primary concern. Desert conditions created unpredictable air currents that could affect bullet trajectory significantly. Sarah spent precious minutes studying wind indicators throughout the valley, mapping the air movement patterns she'd need to account for. At exactly 0547 hours, a figure appeared on the compound's rooftop. Through her scope, Sarah could clearly identify her target beginning his morning prayers. The terrorist leader was positioned precisely where intelligence had predicted, vulnerable and exposed. Sarah controlled her breathing and settled into her natural point of aim. 1,400 meters of desert air separated her from a man responsible for hundreds of American deaths. The weight of that responsibility focused her mind completely. She made final adjustments to her scope, accounting for wind, temperature, and elevation differences. The target remained stationary, focused on his prayers, and unaware of the danger from the distant ridgeline. Sarah's finger found the trigger as she entered the zone of complete concentration her grandfather had taught her to achieve. The world narrowed to nothing but the crosshairs, the target, and the perfect moment to fire. The rifle cracked once, its sound echoing across the desert valley. Sarah maintained her position behind the scope, tracking the bullet's flight until it struck home. The target dropped immediately, the precision of the shot leaving no doubt about the outcome. Immediately, Sarah began packing her equipment for extraction. The compound below erupted into activity as guards responded to their leader's death, but they would find no trace of the shooter who'd eliminated him from nearly a mile away. The extraction phase proved as challenging as the approach. Sarah had to cover 8 kilometers of hostile terrain while avoiding search parties that quickly spread throughout the area. Her training in fieldcraft proved invaluable as she evaded multiple groups of armed men searching for any sign of foreign presence. 12 hours after insertion, Sarah reached the extraction point precisely on schedule. The helicopter appeared exactly when promised, allowing her to complete the mission successfully and disappear into international airspace before Syrian forces could mount an effective response. The flight back to base was surreal. Sarah had successfully completed one of the most difficult sniper missions ever attempted, eliminating a high-value target under impossible conditions with no support and minimal backup. Yet she felt no triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of duty completed. The debriefing session was brief and clinical. Mitchell confirmed mission success and noted that intelligence indicated significant disruption to terrorist operations following the target's elimination. Outstanding performance, she said simply. The precision of your shot and your extraction under pressure exceeded all expectations. Commander Harrison added his assessment. This operation represents the kind of capability America needs in an increasingly complex security environment. Solo operations requiring extreme precision and absolute discretion. As the formal debrief concluded, Sarah realized her military career had reached an inflection point. Word of her capabilities would spread through classified channels, leading to more missions of increasing difficulty and importance. That evening, back at the Naval Special Warfare Facility, Sarah found her SEAL teammates waiting in the common area. They couldn't ask about her mission, but their presence conveyed understanding and support. Morrison approached her as she headed toward her quarters. "Welcome back," he said quietly. "Heard the mission went well." "As well as expected," Sarah replied. "That's not what I heard," Morrison said with a slight smile. "What I heard is that you just made the impossible look routine." Over the following days, Sarah attempted to return to normal training routines, but the dynamic had changed again. Her teammates now viewed her not just as a skilled sniper, but as someone capable of operating at levels they could barely comprehend. Williams cornered her during weapons maintenance. "So what's it like?" he asked. "Operating completely alone, knowing backup isn't coming if things go wrong?" Sarah considered the question carefully. Different from team operations. More focused in some ways, but also more isolated. Everything depends on your individual preparation and decision-making. "Think you'll do more solo missions?" Before Sarah could answer, Chief Rodriguez appeared with a sealed envelope bearing her name. The return address indicated Naval Special Warfare Command, and the classification markings suggested another highly sensitive assignment. "Looks like you're becoming quite popular with the higher-ups," Rodriguez observed as Sarah accepted the envelope. Inside was a brief message requesting her presence at another classified briefing in 48 hours. The mission details were absent, but the urgency and security classification suggested something even more challenging than her recent Syrian operation. Martinez joined the conversation as Sarah read the message. "Word is spreading about your capabilities," he said. "Spec Ops Command is taking notice of what you can do." "That could be good or bad," Williams pointed out. "Elite capabilities tend to attract the most dangerous missions." Sarah understood the truth in that observation. Her success in Syria had demonstrated abilities that made her invaluable for operations others couldn't attempt. That value would inevitably lead to missions of increasing risk and importance. "The question is," Morrison said thoughtfully, "how long can someone operate at that level before the odds catch up with them?" It was a sobering thought. Elite operators often burned bright and, briefly, their exceptional skills leading to assignments that eventually exceeded even their remarkable capabilities. That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah reflected on the path her military career was taking. She'd joined the Navy planning to serve her country, but never imagining she'd rise to such rarefied levels of special operations. Her grandfather's teachings echoed in her memory. With great skill comes great responsibility, but also great danger. Those who can do what others cannot will always be asked to attempt what others will not. The wisdom in those words was becoming clear. Sarah's unique combination of skills had opened doors to missions that existed in the shadows of American military operations. Each success would lead to greater challenges, more dangerous assignments, and higher stakes. But, as she prepared for sleep, Sarah felt no regret about the path she'd chosen. The Syrian mission had eliminated a terrorist responsible for hundreds of deaths, and future operations would likely save even more lives. The young woman who'd once been dismissed by SEALs as too small and inexperienced had become someone nation's most sensitive missions depended upon. Tomorrow would bring new briefings, new challenges, and New opportunities to prove that sometimes the most devastating weapon in America's arsenal came in the most unexpected package. Whatever lay ahead, Sarah knew she was ready to face it. Her grandfather's training, combined with hard-earned experience, had forged her into exactly what her country needed: a precision instrument capable of achieving the impossible when failure was not an option. The envelope in her hands represented the next chapter in that journey, and, despite the risks involved, she looked forward to discovering what new challenges awaited the quiet sniper who'd learned to make the impossible look routine. The classified briefing room was packed with more senior officers than Sarah had ever seen in one place. Admirals, generals, and civilian officials filled every chair around the massive conference table. At the head sat the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his presence indicating the extraordinary nature of whatever mission was about to be discussed. Sarah took her assigned seat near the back, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the collection of stars and eagles surrounding her. Just 18 months ago, she'd been an intelligence specialist analyzing reports at a desk job. Now she was sitting in the Pentagon's most secure briefing room, apparently about to receive a mission briefing from the highest levels of American defense leadership. Admiral Patricia Hayes, the first female chairman of the Joint Chiefs, called the meeting to order. Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd commanded fleets and shaped military policy for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, what we discuss in this room today has implications for national security that extend far beyond any single military operation. The success or failure of this mission could determine whether American civilians live or die. She activated a wall-mounted display showing satellite imagery of a sprawling urban area. 18 days ago, intelligence agencies confirmed that a terrorist cell has smuggled a radiological dispersal device into New York City. A dirty bomb capable of contaminating several city blocks with radioactive material. The gravity of the situation hit Sarah immediately. A dirty bomb in Manhattan could kill thousands directly and force the evacuation of millions more. The economic and psychological damage would be incalculable. General Morrison, chairman of the Army Joint Chiefs, continued the briefing. The device is currently located in a heavily fortified warehouse in Queens. The terrorists are led by Hassan al-Rashid, a former Iraqi military officer with extensive training in unconventional warfare. Sarah recognized the name from intelligence reports. Al-Rashid had orchestrated numerous attacks across Europe and the Middle East, always managing to evade capture through careful planning and ruthless elimination of anyone who might betray him. Traditional assault options are not viable, Admiral Hayes explained. The warehouse is located in a densely populated area with numerous civilian buildings nearby. Any conventional military action risks detonating the device or causing massive civilian casualties. CIA Director Margaret Thompson, an elderly woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, took over the presentation. Intelligence indicates al-Rashid plans to detonate the device in 48 hours during the morning rush hour. Maximum casualties and maximum psychological impact. The timeline was terrifyingly short. 48 hours to prevent what could be the worst terrorist attack on American soil since September 11th. However, Director Thompson continued, we have identified a potential solution. Al-Rashid follows a specific routine that creates a narrow window of vulnerability. New imagery appeared showing detailed surveillance footage of the warehouse area. Every evening at sunset, Al-Rashid performs prayers on the warehouse roof. He's exposed for approximately 8 minutes before returning to the fortified interior. Admiral Hayes looked directly at Sarah for the first time during the briefing. Petty Officer Chun, your recent performance in Syria demonstrated capabilities that make this mission possible. The shot distance would be approximately 1,800 meters from the nearest concealed position. 1,800 meters. Over a mile through urban environment with countless variables affecting trajectory. It was beyond the range most snipers would even attempt, let alone expect to hit accurately. What about extraction? Sarah asked. After eliminating al-Rashid, you'd provide overwatch for an immediate assault on the warehouse by multiple FBI tactical teams. Without leadership, intelligence suggests the remaining terrorists will likely surrender rather than attempt to detonate the device. Sarah studied the satellite imagery carefully, noting the urban terrain, potential firing positions, and numerous complications created by operating in one of the world's most densely populated cities. "What's the civilian risk assessment?" she inquired. General Morrison answered grimly. "If al-Rashid succeeds in detonating the device, casualty estimates range from 5,000 to 15,000 immediate deaths, with hundreds of thousands more affected by radiation exposure and economic displacement." The weight of those numbers was staggering. Sarah was being asked to prevent what could be the worst disaster in New York City's history. The shot position would be atop a 40-story office building in Midtown Manhattan, Director Thompson explained. "You'd be inserted during normal business hours, masquerading as maintenance personnel. The building has been cleared of civilians on the top 5 floors under the pretense of elevator repairs." Sarah examined the proposed firing position through additional imagery. The office building offered an excellent elevated position with clear sight lines to the warehouse, but the urban environment created unprecedented challenges for long-range shooting. "Wind patterns?" she asked. "Highly variable due to urban canyon effects," Thompson replied. "Meteorological analysis suggests conditions will be most favorable during the target window between 1830 and 1840 hours." Admiral Hayes leaned forward, her expression grave. "Petty Officer Chun, this mission represents the most critical sniper operation in American military history. The precision required exceeds anything previously attempted, and the stakes couldn't be higher." Sarah felt the weight of expectation from every person in the room. Admirals and generals who commanded millions of personnel were depending on her ability to make an impossible shot under unimaginable pressure. "I understand the stakes," she said quietly. "When would the mission commence?" "Transportation to New York begins in 6 hours, Admiral Hayes replied. "You'll have 36 hours to prepare, establish position, and execute the mission." The timeline was compressed, but manageable. Sarah's Syrian experience had taught her to adapt quickly to new environments and changing conditions. "What equipment will be available?" she asked. General Morrison gestured to a technical specialist who'd been silent throughout the briefing. "You'll have access to the most advanced sniper systems in American inventory, including specialized ammunition designed for extreme-range urban shooting." The specialist, a civilian contractor named David Chun, activated a detailed equipment display. "The rifle system has been specifically modified for this mission, with enhanced ballistic computers and environmental sensors. It's essentially the most sophisticated shooting platform ever deployed." Sarah studied the technical specifications with growing appreciation for the complexity of the equipment. The rifle system incorporated technologies she'd only heard rumors about, including real-time wind measurement and automatic trajectory calculation. "Training time with the new equipment?" she inquired. 8 hours at a specialized facility outside the city," Chin replied. "Enough time to familiarize yourself with the systems and confirm zero at various distances." As the briefing concluded, Sarah realized she was about to attempt the most difficult shot in sniper history while using equipment she'd never fired before. The margin for error was essentially zero, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. Admiral Hayes stood as the meeting ended. "Petty Officer Chun, the President has been briefed on this operation. He specifically requested that I convey his confidence in your abilities and his appreciation for your willingness to undertake this mission." The presidential acknowledgement was both humbling and terrifying. Sarah had gone from anonymity to operating at the highest levels of national security in